Well, thank you for being here. I think it's a very important subject to talk about today. And I hope after this talk you will feel it's important as well. A little bit about myself. I think few people know me, the rest of you don't. My name is Annelies Verhelst and I'm the new business manager at Digitaal Toegankelijk, or Accessibility Desk in English. And I'm also a consultant and trainer or expert in digital accessibility. And well, I have studied ICT like 15 years ago, and well, back then I discovered that ICT is not accessible to a lot of people. A lot of people don't even understand it, so you're the lucky few who do. If you want to read more about accessibility, you can add me on LinkedIn or follow me there. A little bit more about where I work. We're a social enterprise. Enterprise sounds big, we're 24 people. And we're based in Utrecht and committed to make the digital world more inclusive, because it isn't. And we do that by means of audits, consultancy, user testing, and training. And I have a question for you, just before I dive into the contents. How many two-factor authentication items do you have in your Authenticator app? Assuming you have just a lot. Yes. Too much. I agree with that. I mean, I've counted them in my Authenticator app and there are 30 in there. So it's ridiculous, and most of it is work related and a lot of other stuff is just hobby related. Do you feel you have enough time to find the right code? Never, no, yes. Cool. I will get back to you on that. Because I know where to find most of my items by now, because I've gone through the list like a million times. And so I'm pretty fast. And I also discovered there's a search bar on top. And I'm not the average user, obviously. I'm in the 5% range of skilled people that know how to use apps and, well, knows what to do with digital products. And you might be as well, because you're here. So we know what's what. But what about people with disabilities? Because that's why I'm here. At least 32% of people in the Netherlands have a permanent disability. And that, I know it's a surprising number. Our government says it's a little bit lower, but research is a bit wonky on that one. It's around 5.5 million people. And in Europe, that's roughly 25%, so roughly between 25% and 35% in the whole world. And it's a shame that we keep forgetting about these people, because this is what we're talking about. We're talking about visual disabilities, disabilities in speech, auditory, physical/motor disabilities, cognitive, also disabilities in language. And there's one that's not an actual disability, but we make it so as a society. Well, and you're part of that. I'm sorry to call you out on that one. Here's some facts, and it's not a matter of summing them up. Most of the disabilities are combined. So 1.5 million people have a hearing disability. Same amount of people have motor impairments. And 2.5 million people have low literacy, and that's actually a daunting number. And it's becoming worse because for some reason people don't like to study language in school. They hate it. They hate grammar, and they ask ChatGPT to fix their grammar. 1 in 12 men have color blindness, and just so you know, 1 in 250 women, and it's very discriminatory. Sorry, it's a gene. And 300,000 people are visually impaired, so either they have low vision or they're totally blind. But there's also temporary and situational disabilities. And, well, I know it's not great in the back, but you can have an ear infection or a broken arm. You can have cataract, and fortunately it can be fixed. Usually you can have migraines, laryngitis, but also in certain situations you can feel like you're not able to do the things you want to do. Because when there's loud music, you cannot hear your phone properly, or you cannot speak to people. When you walk outside and it's a sunny day, sometimes your screen goes dark and you can see what you're doing. Well, having an accent is a problem in some parts of, well, basically the world. And you can be overstimulated, and that's why we have a quiet room in the back. And for most people with disabilities, it's important that they can use the digital world because they want to stay connected. And for some of them, it's the only way to stay connected to friends, to work, to their schools. And also entertainment is important because if you are not able to work 40 hours a week, you need entertainment. We all need that. But we can go to the movies, we can go to places, but not everybody is able to. And it makes them vulnerable depending on the digital world. And what makes it unsafe is what you can imagine by now. It creates so many situations an able person never has to think about. So imagine this. Have you ever thought of finding the right two-factor item on time with a screen reader? I know how many of you have ever used a screen reader? How much of an effort is it to find that? Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And then you have to go to your phone to an authenticator app, I presume, or? Okay, so check. So for the people at home live streaming this, you're using this from your desktop mostly, and so well, and it's difficult enough because some websites don't give you enough time to find the right code. Cool. I don't know how many of you have employers that block password managers, but it happens. There are plenty of large organizations that say, I'm sorry, but most password managers are unsafe to use, so we're blocking them. So find other ways to remember your password or use a passphrase or whatever. And they make it a lot more difficult to remember passwords, especially for people with cognitive issues. How are you going to determine if a website is fake when you're visually impaired? I just discussed this with Elgar here in the front. Screen readers do not announce if a website is safe at all. It just starts with the title in the tab and then goes to the rest of the page without stating if there's any shield available or whatever. So you can easily target people using screen readers. Using a QR code when you're blind, I have seen so many marketing campaigns where a QR code is used to make people do stuff, and just that, nothing else that they can use. And well, it's usually not dented, so you cannot even feel that's there. And I know there are some providers, for example, that give cards for activating your SIM card. And they made it braille friendly, so that's super cool if you do that. So you can at least locate where the QR code is and then try to point your camera at it. One I have encountered myself. Have you ever tried calling the doctor when you're deaf or you can't speak? I had laryngitis. I could not call the doctor, and there was no other way to contact them. At least not the same day. I could try message them, and it said, well, we'll get back to you in approximately 2 days. I'm like, well, I don't know what happens in 2 days, but I might be better, I might be worse. And there's more. What if I depend on my face for security because I cannot use anything else, because I have no fingerprints? I mean, it exists. I follow an Instagram account, and there's a baby with no feet and no hands. It has only stumps. And, well, that baby is going to grow up in a world where fingerprints are very common, and he cannot use anything else but his face and his mouth to do things. What if layered authentication can't work for everyone? What's the fallback then? I'm going to let you think about that. What if I can't call the IT department because I'm deaf? I mean, people have deaf employees, but they never thought about how are they going to connect to specific departments. And an email is easily spoofed. So what if there's only a visual CAPTCHA? It still happens. I mean, CAPTCHAs are getting better, but there's still a lot of websites out there that use only visual CAPTCHAs, making it unusable. And not being able to send a form is sometimes not fantastic. And what if password requirements are too strict or unclear? And what if I don't remember my security questions or the answer to it? Because sometimes you have to make an account, and you all know that. You have to set like 2 questions with 2 answers to it, and maybe 5 years later, you will have to remember that. And, well, most of the time you don't even remember what question you selected, let alone what the answer was to that. And this is a real-life case. This was an employer who asked to set a normal password, but after the password, you needed to enter a PIN, and the PIN was even worse than the password. And this is a lot to process. So people with cognitive issues, and I mean, I have ADD. I mean, I'm lost after the first 2. I'm like, huh? Okay, whatever, dude. I'm not doing this. But mostly you have no choice. And this is a real big problem because, and I mean, I come from marketing, and I know the marketing of McAfee is the worst. But it's the same for Norton, and it's the same for basically all of it. It looks like shit, and it looks very, well, and this looks better than the actual promo emails from McAfee. I mean, the logo is like flashing and doing cool stuff, and it looks like a genuine offer. It isn't. And so for me, that was even hard to recognize. I mean, this is one colleague of mine got. So I think this is even harder to recognize for people who are not into security. They just install shit and think like, wow, this is safe, this is cool, and this is a great offer, I think. We all know these. We all know the emails or the text you get from DPD or PostNL or any other delivery service. This looks amateuristic, right? But a screen reader does not recognize a lot of these characters, so it will just read it, and you will not be able to recognize if it's real unless you think, huh, that tracking rsm.live sounds weird. I got this one. It looks really cool. I was like, whoa, you can do this in texts. But then I saw, oh, I'm added to a group chat. So, I mean, I think this is the worst one. But this one, it looks real. It isn't. And I've received this, I think, from my gas and electrical provider as well. And even I had to doubt whether it was real and had to check in the app, like, whoa, did you actually send me an extra bill? So the same happens for insurance. And healthcare insurance is particularly, well, a problem, especially if you have disabilities, because probably you will be very dependent on health services. So it's very likely that you get these kinds of bills for this amount of money. Well, and if you think, oh, I don't want to get in trouble, because you're going to pay. And then there's AI, and I'm not going to dive into AI today because I don't have the time, but this afternoon Nicole van der Meulen will have a talk about AI and how it changes the whole biometrics game. So please go there if you want to know more about it. But it's changing the game because more and more people with disabilities will depend on AI in the future, because it also solves a lot. It does a lot of good stuff too, but it could also be very bad. And for now, it looks mostly bad, I'm sorry to say. I found research, because there's a lot of research about people with disabilities and how they use the digital world. And there's this report online, but unsupported, and you should look it up. It's a study done by the government of the UK, but there's plenty of studies out there. And 84% of people with specifically learning disabilities said that they would find cyber safety training helpful, but nearly two-thirds had never received any outside school or college. And well, things go fast in cybersecurity. So imagine like the last training I got was 15, 20 years ago. Maybe things changed. Only 31% knew how to spot a fake email. And 29% did not know how to change privacy settings. And there's a lot more numbers in there. And also their caregivers did not receive proper training. So I think these are daunting numbers, and it's only the people with learning disabilities. It's not even the people who are visually impaired or have any other impairments. And so the report said there's a number of things you can do, but I see in real life that it doesn't happen a lot. So this is my call for you to just make it happen and make sure that you include people with disabilities in your tests, in your programs, in everything else that you do. And also, this is the part where accessibility comes in. Because all that information out there needs to be accessible to people. Because without that, they're never going to get that information. And yeah, when I look at this, I can see where cybersecurity and accessibility come, but I'm going to go deeper into that. Because cybersecurity protects people's data. I think that's a given. And accessibility protects their access to the data in any kind of way. I mean, and access provides control. And if you control your data, you're the owner of the data, usually. I'm not telling you this because everything's wrong and you're not doing a great job. I think you're doing an excellent job. It's usually the clients that make it icky. I think cybersecurity and accessibility are in the same boat in a lot of ways. They have a lot in common, and if partnered, they could be great together. So how can we make that happen? How can we work together? And having a way forward and working together starts with understanding each other. It's like dating. I'm dating, so I thought that's a great analogy. Be conscious of each other's needs. Sorry. Work on smoothing things out so you can have a long and happy life together. That's the goal. It starts with knowing the applicable laws, so knowing each other's boundaries and make a plan of how are we going to make this work. It's like getting married, you need a prenup, that too. So talking about laws and guidelines, I mean, not everything is a law. And, you know, the first 3 lines, I'm not into all of that, that's your area. There's this NIS2, DORA, CRA, whatever, and it protects against cyber threats for users. And that's all on the backside of, well, the digital world, and I have no clue what y'all are doing there, but the whole thing is it protects people. And there's product safety, and that's the whole goal of that is reliable products increase user protection, obviously. And I'm going to get back to that. There's digital services safety, so that's not product but service. And there's a lot of laws and things this year that have been in place, like the Digital Services Act, the GDPR a few years ago. Also the AI Act, which is not yet implemented everywhere, but still it's there. The goal of that is transparency and that you can have safe transactions and, of course, privacy, because the more you use digital services, the more data you're going to send over the web. But to make all of that, well, usable, you'll have to have an accessible user experience. And that's where I think new words come in, like the WAD and the EAA, which I'm going to tell you about. And that makes sure that equal participation and autonomy in use of digital services are actually possible. Because, well, the government became more and more digital. And back in 2018, this Web Accessibility Directive got implemented in the Netherlands. And it means that government websites, apps, cloud apps, intranet, so basically everything that the government touches, also semi-government, needs to be accessible, including published documents. I don't know if any of y'all have tried reading a PDF with a screen reader. It's usually no-go. But it needs to be accessible, and that's a hell of a job because, well, an average municipality have 1,000 PDF documents on their website published, and that's ridiculous. And since this year, there's the European Accessibility Act. and it's implemented in 7 existing laws in the Netherlands since June. And it means that e-commerce, banking, telecom, transport need to be accessible for consumers. It's a consumer law. And, well, it means this. It's for services and for products. So basically everything a consumer can do, well, needs this. And the fun part of that is that also smartphones and computers and terminal equipment like routers also needs to be accessible. What does accessible mean, though, and how to get there? Anyone, regardless of their capabilities, status, demographics, etc., doesn't matter who you are, you have to be able to use a digital product or service in a universal way. And nobody should have to take extra measures to use the product or service as intended. It's not up to the user to find solutions to problems they did not create in the first place. So I think that's a sentence you all want to remember, because the user did not create the web. They did not create this software. They did not create these safety issues. So it's up to us and everybody who builds it to fix that. And the relevant document in this case is unfortunately a PDF, but it is screen reader accessible. And it's a lot of technical things, but it's based on the WCAG, the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, for websites and apps, but it also has sections for software and other ICT, and it's pretty specific in some cases about how you need to make things accessible for assistive technology. I mentioned the screen reader, I mentioned Braille. A Braille display gives information back in Braille. And there's a lot of other assistive tech as well, and you all need to take that into account. They have some overlap. Some things are very easy, and that's why I want to go into the WCAG a little bit deeper, because that's the basis for basically all of the sections. But I will recommend you read this thing because it has a lot of interesting stuff in there. So it's basically accessibility is based on 4 principles, and the first one is perceivable. Can everyone perceive the content? Easy. Operable, can everyone reach and use the content? That's the fun one, because usually we think about, well, if you think about phones, you need to be able to use your finger. If you think about desktop, you have a mouse, but it also needs to work on keyboard only or with other devices that you might not even be able to think about. Is it understandable? Can everyone understand it? And specifically in the ICT area, that's very difficult. Is it robust? Is it built for all browsers in case of web? Or, well, does it work with every Windows version or Mac version that's still out there? And does it work with assistive tech? So this is it. So, and below that there are 13 guidelines and 78 success criteria, of which level A and AA are actually mandatory within both of the laws I mentioned. And the questions you need to ask yourself are these. There's a lot of questions, and the basic ones, who are we forgetting about? Then obviously I gave you that answer here, but can we also implement accessibility in the core of our operations? And I think that's the same question you ask your clients. Like, can we implement cybersecurity in the core of our operations? Or is it just a thing that you need to do somewhere on the side? Are we, or your client, compliant with accessibility laws? Did we test with or on users with disabilities? And that's a fun one, because this afternoon, Ruben Holmes is going to have a workshop where you can actually make scenarios to try and hack some people. And I already talked to him, and he was like, yeah, sure, I can make a scenario where we are going to try and hack a person with a disability. So go do that. It's going to be fun. Are you people trained in using assistive tech? Because I think that's like basically accessibility 101, that, well, try and use a screen reader, try and access things with keyboard only. Can we make sure people with disabilities are also safe? And I think that's the main question. Okay, got 5 minutes left. Awesome. Right on schedule. Well, and so the value of taking accessibility into account in cybersecurity is this. And I think these are familiar, because I think if you sell cybersecurity to clients, most of these are basically the same. It provides you with less tickets in your customer support system, because people won't ask you, I cannot find this, I cannot do this, I'm stuck here. And then some customer support employee needs to fix that for you or with you, or they can't because it's blocked. You're less vulnerable for lawsuits because, well, adhering to laws is just like a thing you need to do. And lawsuits cost you money. It makes you a better company. We are a B Corp, for example, and I know a lot of other companies try to become a B Corp as well. And if you can say that you take people with disabilities into account, that's usually a plus. It creates loyal customers or employees, and especially within the group of people with disabilities. If they discover that your service is safe, your company is a great company because they take them into account, they will become a very loyal customer. And if they find a web shop that's easy to use and they have their products, they are not going to look elsewhere. They will return. There's less risk of fraud or data leaks. Obviously, because if you make people safer and actually have them create like a safe password in a way that works for them, and you can explain to them these are the risks of dropping your files into some cloud service, well, it helps. There's less risk of reputation damage as a result of that. And we all know, because, well, there's been a lot of news about some hacks recently, and it causes reputation damage. It does that. And, well, it does a lot more than that, but basically that. And it creates trust. And that's my next point, because, well, all of that news does not create trust, well, especially for women in this case, to go and do some things with doctors. Well, and in the end, more happy customers means more money. Yay. Well, that was that. So I think that's clear for everybody. But I do know that this is just the tip of the iceberg. I just mentioned accessibility, and you're like, whoa, this is a lot of information to take in. Luckily, the internet's there for you. So we have our own knowledge base, which explains it a little bit more in detail. It's in Dutch, sorry. But also there's DECU. DECU has like a whole knowledge base and the resources, and they also have online courses. I do not work there. I have no relations with them at all, but I love their courses. And obviously we all know the W3C, at least I hope so, because they sort of made the web a thing. And they have the Web Accessibility Initiative, where everything about accessibility, including code samples and everything else is, well, it's there. They all know, how can I check it myself? Because I want to use some tools. Because that's what we do, and I don't blame you for that. So I have tools. But remember, a fool with a tool is still a fool. So read into what the tool does and see if it works for you. There's plenty of tools out there, so what I mentioned might not work for you. This will. The first thing you need to do is test with keyboard only. Whatever you're building, whatever you're, well, suggesting to your clients, test this first. And this is how you do it, and I hope you're familiar with it. And if not, well, you can look at the live stream and just do that. The screen reader. For Windows, the recommended one is NVDA. It's free. You can download it and you can use it. It has a very steep learning curve. So I would advise you to take 10 minutes a week or something, maybe more, to get used to the auditory information you will get, because we are not used to having auditory information prompted by us like really fast. So do that, but you will get used to it at some point. I got used to it after like a month. And there's also one on Mac, and it also is there on iOS and on Android. That's TalkBack. And it's very annoying sometimes because it has a short key. So sometimes when I have my phone in my pocket, it will just start shouting things at me. There's a color contrast checker, especially with error messages or in forms or in, well, other important information. Some of the coloring is not fantastic for people with color blindness or, well, any other form of visual impairments. So use this color contrast checker. And there's a lot of color contrast checkers out there. So this is just the one. There's Wave. This is browser-based, so this is for everything on the web, and it's an automated testing tool. And the thing with automated testing tools is that it could give you false positives or false negatives, so read into that before you use it, and try and make sense of it. But can't explain anymore because, well, time's up. You can test your Windows apps if you have a Windows app, and it's in Windows. You can do all of that right there. And same for Mac apps, called Xcode. It's a developer tool. It gives you all the information about the accessibility of your app or tool in there. So that's really cool. So that's that. And well, I'm 1 minute over time. Sorry for that. If you need any more information, find me. I will be here until after lunch. So if you have any more questions, holler at me. Thank you.